Hello everyone and welcome to Pushing Positivity on the Pier, where we introduce amazing people, take a deeper look into their story, and share how they're making positivity actionable each day. I'm Josh Schiller, and today we have the pleasure of being joined by vlogger, YouTuber, blogger, influencer, founder of the Social Girl Traveler, and also life liver, Jen Morilla.
Hey!
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
How's that for an introduction?
That's a good introduction, man. I don't think I've had an introduction like that. You literally said it all and very well, consecutively and everything. I'm impressed.
So just so everyone knows out there, how warm is it out here right now?
It is approximately 50 degrees, and when you told me to bring a scarf and a sweater this morning, I brought the sweater, I left the scarf.
We get here, it's like, oh, we're on the pier.
Yeah,
Right?
we're literally on the pier, yes. We're literally on the pier. But it does not beat this view, so it's worth it.
It's amazing. That freedom right there. So on the note about freedom, right, I think your story is really a story, I could say, of freedom. So before we get to how you got to being all these other things, let's take a couple steps back. So where does the story for Jen start?
Oh man, all right. Okay, so I come from a Cuban American background. Well, I'm first generation Cuban American, born and raised Cuban immigrants. Both my parents met on a blind date at like 22 or something like that. And they had me, my sister, and my brother. And anybody that's watching this that is Latino or has any type of Hispanic background totally gets that. And I say this all the time, you know, I grew up in America. I'm so proud to be American. I don't think I would ever change that. And traveling the world has definitely confirmed that so much more. But culturally, I am 100% Hispanic. The way I celebrated my Christmases, my New Year's.
So does that mean Christmas Eve you actually celebrate?
Oh, yeah. We don't celebrate. We recover on Christmas Day. It's the recovery time on Christmas Day. And I just, growing up and like, you know, the values of the upbringing, the way I was, this is a perfect example. I'm having my high school reunion in 2 weeks, my 10-year high school reunion. And I was class president, top of my class. I was a good student. I was a good girl. And I had a curfew. I was the only senior that had to be home at 11 o'clock at night. And yo, you best believe that if I wasn't on my way home at least on my way home by 11 o'clock, then my dad was in his truck on his way to find me. And one time I actually caught him like leaving the block of my house that I was coming in. My phone had died. And he's like looking at me and he's like, but I love my family. You know, I don't think I would have changed it at all. Now that I'm older and I look back, I definitely appreciate it a lot more. Because I'm not easy. Definitely not at 18. I went to Pace University in New York City. I was there for all 4 years. I graduated with a marketing degree, and my dream was to work for corporate America and build my way up and then eventually own my own agency. And the funny thing was that my parents are entrepreneurs. They have their own businesses. My dad owns an own restaurant. They have property. My mom has her own clothing business. And so naturally, my upbringing was not to work for anybody. And even as a little kid, I was always doing stuff like I live on a dead end, so I would always like have lemonade and like always like I was always selling.
I remember hearing you were selling popcorn out the
window.
Yes.
Oh my God, it was so true. My mom was laughing. I had her hear that podcast and she was cracking up. She's like, oh my God, I remember that. She would buy like those big bags at Costco. You know what I'm talking about? Like the ones that were like human size.
Yep.
And I would sell it. I was like, Mom, I'm not gonna eat all this popcorn. I mean, I could, but I really shouldn't, right? And she was like, Mija. But so yeah, I went to Pace University and I had this, I was always the kind of person that was like, okay, next step. What's the next step? What's the next step? And I always had a plan. I've never been the kind of person to I've stuck to a plan. Like if I say I want something, I get it, but I've never done it in like the one-way direction, like a straight line. I've always had difficulty getting there. Like I've always had to work hard getting good grades and just like, if I wanted something, I always had to work extra hard to get it. But I loved it. I loved being like that extra, like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it. But more than anything, it was always like worried. I have a plan, next steps. And my senior year of college, I had a younger brother and he passed away. And he passed away and it was an accident. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And his life was taken from him. My brother was what we call Irish twins. So he was a year and a month younger than I was. And he was my best friend. We did everything together, and we were always together. Well, I wouldn't say always together. We were together most of the time. It was Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We were always together. We had the same mutual friends. I loved his girlfriend, and so we got along pretty well. And when he passed away, tragically, my life literally turned upside down and inside out. And I was in a very, very, very bad place. And it wasn't just once, there were several times that I was in a bad place. Aside from that, months later, I ended up losing both my mom's side. My mom lost both her parents. They were old, but we had to deal with that. And my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So she had to start going chemo treatment. My dad was severely depressed. And so it was not a good place. And so my senior year of college, I graduated. I don't even know how I graduated, but I actually I started the year with a 3.5 GPA and I graduated with a 2.8. And nobody could tell me different. I didn't care. As long as I walked down that aisle and I finished, that's all I wanted to do. So I started working for corporate America. I was working for about 2 years and decided I want to get my master's, do something different, and I wanted to leave New York. So I got my master's in London, went over to London, did that for about a year.
Social entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I've told a couple of people this. And I was like, yeah, she has her master's in social entrepreneurship. And it's like one of those things like,
what is that?
What is that?
Yeah, I always get that all the time. So social, and it's funny because when I first saw it, I remember thinking like, what is this, like marketing, like social, like, because I think social, right? It's actually social impact and social initiatives. So working with like NGOs, profits, but social impact is working for, or social enterprises is working for a for-profit company. So a percentage of your proceeds go to a cause.
Like
so
the TOMS.
Right, like the TOMS is perfect theory. We studied that theory 1,000%. And it was like finding a lot of my research was like the main reasons why NGOs fail in third world countries or even in the United States.
Why is that?
The lack of resources and the lack of funding. Like people think that because it's an NGO, it's just like free, but it's really not. It's an actual business and there goes money behind it.
You have to sell. You need to get money, right?
And
the ask is hard.
It is hard.
People think, well, if I start a nonprofit, people are just going to pour money into it because it's a good cause.
Right.
And all these other causes that are vying for those same dollars.
Right, exactly. No, it is. That's exactly the way it is. And it's funny because after getting a master's like that, I was like, you know what? I'm not a fan of NGOs. Like, I'm not crazy about them. I'm very particular about the NGOs I work with. Like, I really do in-depth research. Like, we're talking about, I want to know where your money's going, and I want to see, like I want to see a financial outcome of where it is and what's happening. Yeah. Because I liked working for social enterprise. I like looking at those theories because I saw it was right there in front of me. Like, if I bought that hat, I then saw that, 50 cents of that was going to a pair of shoes. And that was like the TOMS theory. And so I did a master's in that, and everything that included, running a business from a management standpoint all the way to the financial standpoint. And it was great. I got so much experience from that. And then my thesis was done in Brazil. So I lived in Brazil for about 3 months. And then I went back to London, graduated. And so I get back to New York and I think to myself, okay, great, I'm done with this travel bug. I lived in Europe for a year. I lived in Brazil. Like, life is good. Like, I'm going to go back to New York. And I got a job, and I got offers to work for NGOs, but to be honest, it didn't pay enough, and I needed to start paying loans. So I got a job back into what I knew, which is marketing in corporate America, and I was an account manager for a boutique firm, and I was there for about 2.5 years, maybe a little less than that. And I started getting into this routine, and I was in a bad place again. That lasted for about a year. I was good for about a year. And then after a year, it was just like this ongoing circle where I saw myself being like, this routine is not what I want. Like, I don't feel fulfilled. And I was starting to get to that like emptiness. And I know that feeling so well. And it scares me because it's not a good place. And when you've been that low, getting out of that is hard.
How have you done that in the past? How have you gotten out in the past? Because over 300 million people are affected by depression. It's the leading cause of disability in the world. How did you take the steps, or what were the steps that you took to get out of it?
I think I've always been a very positive person. So for me to sit down and look at life and be like, what's the point of everything? Like, what's the point of me having a conversation with you? Because that's where I was at a point. And I would resort to alcohol as like my comfort. But it wasn't turning to an alcoholic. It was doing it as like self-sabotaging. So I knew that if I had 5 glasses, I would get this drunk. And then it was okay for me to be mean to you, or it was okay for me to be a jerk, or it was okay for me to cry because this had happened to me, and who cares about you? Like, who are you to tell me different? I was in a bad place. It was definitely not a good place. And I don't think I can tell you how many times when I moved back to New York that I would walk into work and I was still drunk from the night before, and it was a Tuesday or it was a Wednesday. So I saw myself doing that again and feeling mentally, forget about physically it was destroying me, but mentally just like continuing to be in that bad place where I was like, Jen, what are you doing? And I think that when you get to rock bottom, you really have two choices. Either you stay there or you realize that there's something greater than you, and it's not all about you. It's really not. And you need to understand that, yes, mindfully, you need to be worried about who you are and your health and your mental health and your physical health, but think of the people that you're going to leave behind, you know? The thing that killed me the most, and what I realized, was that I was more affected by my family and by their pain than I was by mine. I wasn't dealing with my pain. I was dealing with their pain. I was seeing my mom. I was seeing my dad. I was seeing them deal with the loss of losing a son. And that's because I'm a giver. I think that that's what mentally kind of took me out of it, that I started to see myself from from the outside and being like, Jen, what are you doing? And then I started to see how it started to affect my family. You know, how they were looking at me and they were like, Jenny, you know, mija, what are you doing? What's going on? And I would be like, yeah, whatever, and like walk away and like not pay attention.
So did you help yourself, or did you get help from outside?
I did see a therapist for a while, absolutely, but I knew what I was doing. Like, I knew how depressed I was. I knew the thoughts that I was running, and I would tell her, and I'm like, I'm not going to do anything. And then she's like, are you though? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do anything. And then it was one night that I got really, really, really intoxicated, and I went home to my parents. This was like a Wednesday night. And long story short, I'll never forget my mother's face when I was in the bathroom and I was just like sitting on the floor of the bathroom just crying. And she like walked in and she was like looking at me. She was like, what's wrong? And I remember looking up at her and telling her that I didn't want to be here. And that face resonated with me. Your brother didn't have a choice. Life was taken from him. And you have a choice, and you have everything in front of you. And you're choosing not to live it. And that was like that. And that was it. At that moment, that next day, I woke up and I was like, all right, we're going to make some changes. I just started to like prioritize my life and what I wanted to focus on. And I knew I didn't want to be here anymore. As much as I loved New York and it's made me who I am today, this was just a chapter of my life. You know, I'm here because my family's here, and I love being here when I'm here.
And she loves pushing positivity on the Pier as well.
Yeah, so that was it. And I started setting up a plan. And I said to myself that if I gave myself end dates. So like if by January, it was January 22nd. If by January 22nd I didn't have a job that I really liked somewhere else in the United States or somewhere else in the world, that I was just going to quit and travel. And of course, the universe throws you curveballs left and right, and so I actually did have a job offer. I had a job offer in Denver. I love Denver. It's one of my favorite cities in America. And I had an offer there to do business development for a company. Great offer, and I just declined it because I knew that I was going to be back at the desk, back at the 9 to 5, and I might be happy for a little while because it is a new place and I have new friends, new people, but reality was that I really wanted to travel, and I really wanted to get out and like challenge myself and do something different. And when I left, so I left a month later, February 22nd is the day I left. I bought my ticket January 22nd that day because I like literally wrote it down. I was like, if I don't do this today, I'm never going to do this. And I bought the ticket, and then that was a Sunday. And I remember Monday afternoon, I told my mom, and then I told my dad, and then I told my sister.
Nonchalantly.
Like, yeah, like very casually, like just slipped it in. I've got 30 days in America. And they were like, what? Yeah, where are you going? Oh, you're going to come back? And I'm like, well, just a one-way. And she was like, what? They lost it. They thought I was crazy. They were like, go see a therapist, go talk to someone. Because you don't do that, right? You're 25 years old. You have a successful career. You're young. You've got everything. Why would you just give it all up?
So you took their advice and you went to go see your therapist. And what'd your therapist say?
Okay, so I love my therapist. I still talk to my therapist. Like, I literally text her and I'm like, how's life? She's awesome. And I walk through the door. She's like, get out. And I was like, she's like, I don't have time for this. I see people that actually need to see me. And I was like, I need to see you. And she's like, no, your mom called me. She told me what you're doing. She's like, I think it's great. Don't tell her I said that. She's like, you're fine. She's like, do you feel good? And I'm like, I do. I'm like, understand that, like, I've literally woken up every single day for the past year, because this was before I even decided to leave my apartment and move to New York, move home. That I wanted to do something different. I don't feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't know how to explain it. It's a feeling in your stomach. And I'll talk to people that are like thinking of like leaving their jobs and doing something different, or not even like traveling the world, but just like doing something different. And the first question I ask them is, do you literally wake up and go to sleep with the thought of it? Like you are in love with this idea. Like if it's something that drives you every single day, you haven't done it yet, but it's something you cannot get out of your head. Like you are eating, sleeping, drinking it. And then when you think about it, it's like a nervous, but like a good feeling. It's something you have to do.
So here's my question though, right? Because a lot of people get very romantic about when they start thinking about what that life would be like.
Right.
So would you consider yourself realistic, or would you consider yourself romantic when you were thinking or envisioning about what that life would be like?
I think a little bit of both. I think I have that romantic idea. Like I definitely get carried away. My creativity sticks in 100%. But I think that because of I think that's where New York has stepped in, where my reality is kind of like, all right, let's get back to like grounding, you know? How long is this gonna last? Like where are your funds gonna come from? Like what are you really gonna do? So I think I definitely have that. Do I need more of that? Possibly. But I definitely have that for sure. And so when I left, the idea was that I didn't want to just be like any type of blogger. Like I didn't want to just write about what to do in New York. I mean, like, yeah, that's great too, but I really wanted to do something different. And I left and I said to my dad, like all I asked for my parents was their blessing. That's all I wanted from them. And I said to my dad, I said, look, I speak 3 languages. I've got 2 degrees. I've been working since I was 15. You guys have raised me to believe that we don't need money, and it's true. I've never gone hungry. I never will go hungry. Like, I can take care of myself. And worst case scenario, because I left with $14,000, I'm like, worst case scenario is I spend all this money. $14,000 is nothing. And I come back and work in New York.
Yeah.
I'll find a job. Like, it won't be hard. I have networks. I have connections. Like, I know how to sell myself. Like, I'll make it work. And he's like, oh, I know. And he's like, well, what's your goal? Like, what do you want from this? That's what he said to me. And I said to him, I was crying because I love my parents. They really are my best friend. I talk to them almost every single day. I said to him, I said, Papi, I know you're going to laugh. And he said to him, I said, I want to change the world. And he said to me, he's like, Mija. He's like, that's all beautiful, but you need to be realistic. I was like, yeah, I know what you're going to say, and I get that. I don't know why this is something that I really feel I need to do for myself. So please just respect that. That's what I said to him. He was like, I do. He's like, you'll be fine. So that's it. So I left. And I went to Europe. I went to England. And I was in England for a while. And then I did something called, that I've always wanted to do, the Camino Santiago. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
It's
the pilgrimage walk.
From the south of France to the north of Spain.
Yeah. So I did that. And it's a 500-mile hike. It's a month long. And I did not train for this walk, by the way, which you were supposed to.
You didn't go with chancletas though, right?
No, I did not. I knew a little bit better than that. But I did half of that walk. I did it from the middle of Spain to the end, which is about 2.5 weeks. And again, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't want them to worry because I knew they would be like, you're doing this by yourself? What is this? Because it actually is like a hike. And like you go from little towns in the middle of Spain, and sometimes it's roads, sometimes it's mountains, sometimes it's woods, sometimes it's fields. Like, it's not just like a stroll. Yeah, I literally thought it was like a concrete like stroll. Like, oh, this is gonna be easy peasy. Like, how hard is this gonna be? It's a walk. I can walk. I can walk for days. My friends, do you know what it feels like to walk for days? Now I know why it's a religious walk. Yeah. Because the biggest thing I was worried about were my thoughts. Being alone for that amount of time and what I was gonna start thinking about, what was gonna come to my head. And I had a journal and I wrote everything out, and I looked at this a year ago. A couple months ago, and I was like, I started crying because I couldn't believe I did it, and I was so proud of myself because what I was writing in this journal was crazy. I was 25, and I was meeting people. Listen to this. I was meeting people that were married, that had kids, that were divorced, that were falling in love, that were in love, and were about to be unloved. Because the best testament to love is travel with someone. If you can travel with them and you can deal with them, you are meant to be. If you cannot, oof. And I saw that, and it's funny, like, I literally saw these things. The whole time I'm doing this Camino, I'm so worried about being somewhere. Like, if I have to be somewhere, I don't have a job anymore, I quit that. Like, I don't have a return to play. If I wanted to take a whole month to walk 300 miles, because that's what I walked, I could take a month. But I was like, I gotta go. I was so worried. My brother used to tell me all the time, Jen, you worry so much, stop worrying. He was like a free bird. And he always had that mentality, like, and he was always telling me, Jen, you worry so much, stop worrying. And that's what I was doing the whole Camino. I was so worried about everybody. I was worried about my mom, I was worried about my dad, I was worried about my sister, about my friends. I was worried about what I was going to do, what was the end result, where was I going, why was I doing this. And then at the very end, when I finished, I was like, I did it. I did it all by myself. I'm here at this moment. Everybody's with their lives, they're dealing with it, they're fine, they're breathing, they're alive, they're okay. But I'm here and I'm okay. And I remember that realization. It was the second to last day before I'd reached Santiago. And that day was horrible. I was beating myself up. I was thinking about my brother. I was thinking about my mom. Oh my God, that day was a hot mess. And I wasn't talking to anybody. I was just like walking with my backpack. And I was like,
finish this.
I look like a mad little 5-year-old. It's like, my mommy didn't give me my cookies for lunch. And I got to the very last hill and I'm at the top of the mountain. And I'll never forget it. It was like, the sun was setting. There was cows in a field. And we got to the top. And I kind of when you finish an exercise and you're like,
yeah.
And I did that, and the minute I did that, it was just like tears, and I was laughing and crying. The thing is that I would do that walk again, and I want to do that walk again. I want to do the whole thing. It was such it's not a vacation, but it was such physically pushing myself, mentally pushing myself, and it was all by myself. I didn't have to worry about anybody else. I didn't need to worry about, I needed to focus on me. I needed to focus on what Jen wanted to do, how I wanted to finish, and when I wanted to finish. And it was such an experience. So after that was the peak point. After that, I was like, all right, people, I'm coming in. I ain't stopping. My parents were they were on vacation to Dominican Republic. They were on their way to vacation. And I surprised them. I just showed up. And they were like, oh my God. At that point, I hadn't seen my parents in 4 months. My family in 4 months. We went on a family vacation. And so I was there and I was with them. And then I ended up staying in Dominican Republic for about a month. So I went back to Europe. They were like, oh, so you're done? You're going to come back home? You're going to get a job again? And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. They were like, what? And so I left for $14,000, but the reason why I made it work was because I had jobs along the way. So I was still working. I was freelancing. I was doing a lot of social media, consulting work. Then I was freelance writing, and I was getting money from that. And then when I was actually traveling, I would for example, in Spain, I was teaching English and I was getting paid. So I was doing little jobs. I had lived in Spain. I studied abroad in Spain. So I had friends in Spain. And so I was able to there was a friend that didn't want to show up to work one day and he worked at a bar. So he was like, you want to cover my shift? So I did that. You know what I mean? I speak Spanish. So there was
yep.
So when I say this, it's such a value to know an extra language. Oh my God. The majority.
What's your third?
Portuguese.
Okay.
The majority, and I speak it enough to defend myself. I won't sit here and tell you I speak fluent Spanish, that's easy. But the majority of the jobs I've gotten because I spoke a second language, oh man. When I was in Thailand, so left Europe, decided, all right, I've never been to Southeast Asia, I'm gonna go solo. So I did just that, packed my backpacks, left in September. I was there for 2.5 months, Southeast Asia. I did Thailand, Cambodia, and Indonesia. And when I was in Thailand, I worked at a hostel. I got to stay free at a hostel, not only because I did social media, but also because I covered the front desk for a little bit. I did that for a few different places. So I had money and I could stay anywhere I wanted to, but I didn't want to pay for it because eventually I was going to promote it. And I was like, you know what? I'm pretty decent at photography. This guy has horrible photos. I can give him some good stuff. So a lot of those countries, they use TripAdvisor and as a very important tool for them to because they get a lot of promotion and they'll have their customers do reviews on that. And so they take that very seriously. And so I utilize that 100%. But yeah, I think it's just finding where your value is and having the confidence to say that you have that value. Worst case scenario, that man was going to say no. And I was like, all right, well, I'll reach out to somebody else or I'll go stay at another hostel. The reason why I chose to reach out to him was because I had spent so many months and weeks in hostels. I was like, I need a place of my own. I just kind of want to be alone for a little bit. And I'm like, why not?
I think, even you say, so I get what you're saying when you have to have the confidence to actually approach the person. So again, what if people don't even have that confidence? What was a big factor for you going through life? How did you develop your confidence? Was it preparation? How did you really develop that sense of, I know what I'm about and I know what I can provide and I'm not afraid to ask for it?
It's a great question. I think it's not being afraid of getting no or getting the answer you don't want. Like, accept it. Okay, fine. That only means that I need to find another way to make you say yes. That's the way I've looked at it. I have countless amounts of sales, client arguments, jobs tell me no. Like, you don't know. But I've just been like, all right, well, that's just kind of, when somebody says no to me, it's even more of an ammo for me to keep going. Especially if
Provide
I really
more
want
value.
it. Yes, especially if I really, really want it. I'm so stubborn. I definitely think that that's a quality that I have. And it's like when I set my goals and it's what I want, and I'm gonna make it happen.
And you said it before too, not to cut you off,
Yeah.
but you had said you'd set timelines. So
Yeah.
I think goals
Yeah.
and timelines, right? Because we can set lofty goals,
Right.
but if we don't put a timeline to
Yeah.
it, we may not hold ourselves accountable to it, right?
It's also I think the fact that, and I say this all the time, like the power of writing stuff down. I don't think people realize that. Like,
Write that down.
Yeah, it's like a key. Yeah, right. That's it's like a key. Like it's something, and I say this to anybody that I coach or anything like that. Like, write it down. Like, if you have a goal, I think it's like you said, keeping yourself accountable, and the power of that. When you throw it out to the universe, I'm huge on that. When you throw it out something like that to the universe, the universe doesn't work against us. They really do want to help.
Either way, good way and bad way.
Oh yeah, well that's true. Yeah. Well, I do believe in karma, right? Whatever you put out, you shall receive. But yeah, and so I think that writing it down was such a huge thing for me, because I looked at it every day and it was like January 22nd. Like, if I don't have, and I ended up getting a great job offer, and I was literally, I remember looking, like, I wrote pros and cons and like, what's the worst that could happen? The worst case that could have happened is I spent $14,000 and then I amounted a year of traveling. I don't really care what people think, which I think was the second factor, right? As a lot of people are so worried about what other people are going to think, what their family members are going to think. The only people I truly care of what they think of me are my family members. But you build that line of communication, you build that barrier. It was hard for me. I mean, my parents are Hispanic. They don't know what bloggers are. They don't know what social media is, you know? It was super hard for me to break that barrier and kind of show them what I've done. And it's...
So you want to share your whole life with people outside the house?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Right? No, exactly. And now that I've done it, and I've done it through my writing, I started to do it with my writing, and then my videos came about. But when I started with my writing, and they started to see that people really liked my writing, which also boggled my mind, because I never in a million years thought I was a good writer. And they saw the value that I was putting in, and that I was writing for Huffington Post, and I was writing for Matador, and I was writing for this, and I was getting featured here. They were like, wow, like this could be something, you know? And then it was just kind of them trusting me, and they did, and I'm so thankful for that. Because, you know, over 2.5 years later, and you know, and here I am, and I can say that I'm making a living out of this, and I think I'm excited.
High five to you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see where life takes me.
That was a cold high five too.
Yeah.
It's like, I know my hand did something, I just couldn't feel it.
I can feel my fingers.
All right, so we're giving it value at this point. We're making it work, right? What was that next step in terms of building it into an actual business?
Well, so after I did the Camino, before I headed off to the Camino, I had a website. During the whole time of the Camino, you carry everything you take with you. So I didn't bring my laptop. It was just the essentials. All I had was my phone. So I was like, you know, Instagramming everything, taking photos, and then writing like really long posts about my experience and what I was feeling and blah, blah. But it started to definitely take off after the Camino, because I guess I started to write really good stuff and people loved it. I mean, I did that I walked the Camino for about 2.5 weeks. And then obviously when I got back to my computer, I wrote a post and I did a video and I did all that stuff. But that's when it essentially kicked off. So right after the Camino, I started to really like up my game in terms of blogging, right? So posting once a week, social media 100%, throwing out my networks, and reaching out to brands, reaching out to companies. The very first brand I worked with was with Skype. And I pitched to them. They have Skype ambassadors. They don't have this program anymore. They took it down, but they had what was called Skype ambassadors, and there were people in different types of industry that they supported them. And if it was through like finance, or it was through gaming, or it was through social initiatives, and obviously mine was social initiatives. So the idea that I had when I started blogging after the Camino was that I wanted to share stories. I wanted to share the amazing things that people were doing around the world. So there was no like actual niche yet. It was just like I wanted to share stories. I wanted to share that, but I didn't know how I was going to do that. Mind you, I went to school for marketing, right? So I know how to sell, but I don't know how to edit videos. I don't know how to do photography. I don't know how to, I taught all of that to myself. So long story short, I pitched them this idea. They absolutely loved it. And they were like, we love you to be like a social ambassador. And I was like, great, oh my God, I'm so excited, whatever. And so I started to like tell stories. But then when I was in Dominican Republic and I was volunteering at an orphanage, I saw the lack of water. And like everybody drinks water, right? Everybody needs water. Although some people don't like water, which is weird to me. I actually had a best friend in high school who didn't like water. And so.
Weird.
I know, right? Not very good for you. And so I was in Dominican Republic and I saw the lack of these boys. Like they had, you know, a shower once a week and like all these things. And I was like, something needs to change. So I started doing research and I found an organization called Waves for Water. What they do is they're a nonprofit and they set up, it's like a GoFundMe page. It's like a GoFundMe platform. And they set up, you know, a platform for you to then sell to your audience funds, you know, these X amount of water filters, and then either I can take them or I can, you know, send them to a cause, because there's different causes.
Let's back it up. Waves for Water.
Yeah.
What do they do? So
they're a nonprofit and they sell these water filters, but they sell them to certain types of travelers. The initiative is that you do what you love and you help along the way, right? Which is in line with my initiative. And what they did was, it was founded by a surfer. And now I love to surf. The mentality of most surfers is that they search for the best surfing, the best waves around the world. And they go to the very like untouched places around the world. They find the best waves, but there's like nothing in these places except pure poverty. And so it was this organization founded by a surfer that he was in Indonesia and he saw the lack of clean water in Indonesia. And so he created these little filters. They're literally like this big. I wish I would have brought one. They're like this super tiny. They take place of like a flip-flop in your bag. And the idea is that you take that with you and implement it when you travel in this country. And it's a great idea, but it's a lot harder than that, because you can't just go to a country.
I got the filters.
Right. Be
I'm
like,
here.
yo, the white girl with blonde hair.
Pass them out.
Right. Like, first, like nobody's going to listen to you, because you have to understand that a lot of these people grew up drinking this water. To them, what they drink is not wrong.
It's an educational issue.
Yeah. Right. And I think that when I started to implement that type of give back on my travel, I fell in love with it, because not so much the give back, it was that one person that every time I did something, and it could be like a project of 50 people, but the one person that I would meet that needed it. Once I started doing that, I fell in love with it and I wanted more of it. And I continued. And so I continued to really focus my brand on being that individual. I want people to look at me and think like, okay, well, she's the person we got to go to. We want to know about how we're going to help this. What's the cause? What's the procedure? How is this actually going to work, you know?
So were you getting paid from doing that?
Not at first. So remember, think of it as like an actual if I had a shop, right? And I was selling clothes or something, right? So you have to invest a bunch of money into your business to then go ahead and get a return on it. And so that $14,000 was the investment that I put into myself. So I was getting paid.
$14,000 was going towards what?
The traveling.
Okay.
And like, you know, paying for the flights and stuff like that. And maybe I was getting paid a little bit with articles and like those freebies and stuff, but I wasn't actually getting paid for creating that content until probably like January. I think it was February, March, around there, 2016, pretty much. So a full year after, like actually say like, okay, now I'm actually getting paid, because I've made. How
did that happen? What was the first point where you were actually getting paid?
When a company sent me to go on a trip, and not only was like
Did they find you or you found them?
I found them. Yeah. And then they were paying me to then create content as well. So that's when I officially started to do that. And that was like a little bit,
now you're an
like
influencer.
a year. Yeah, I feel like it was a little bit less than a year. And then obviously the water filters was just a brand of who I was, right? Waves for Water doesn't pay me to do this. I don't work for them. They don't work for me or anything like that. They're just the product that I use to then go ahead and implement in other countries. And then I just started to create this brand, because that's essentially what I was doing. And then companies started to reach out to me and be like,
a social girl traveler.
They were like, all right, well, we want to send you here and we want you to do this and we want you to do that. And so there's several ways that I'll make an income. And if it's through, you know, sponsored posts or sponsored writing or videos or whatever, or just being a personality in a shoot or something, essentially I've created a brand. I've created, you know, Jen Morilla, the social girl traveler. This is what I represent. This is my bubble. This is my audience. And then I'm like a media channel. Think of it like that. I think that's like the best way to describe it, is that people look at me as like somebody that they can like funnel information through.
Sure.
And yeah. And then I've been doing this since 2015, and I've been to a total of 39 countries.
So now we're at the point where we have a full-fledged business, right? We're influencing, we're vlogging, we're blogging, we're working with companies, we're creating branded content, sponsored posts, all these things. We're sitting back here a year from now.
Okay.
What does life look like for Jen?
Oh, a year from now. We're in November, okay.
And it's gonna be cold.
We're not gonna do this outside again. I won't come. I won't come.
We'll just have to provide more value. She'll come.
No, I'll always come. I'm kidding. Oh, that's a good question. I haven't been asked that.
Only the best on pushing positivity.
Yeah. So I think that. So I think next year is going to be full on travel, where a lot of this year, I mean, I did a lot of travel, don't get me wrong, but I did a lot of go and come back here and go and come back here. So I think that this year, 2018, is going to be go and stay.
35 countries, 6 continents already,
So
right?
it's 39, 6 continents.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I want to reach 50 next year. We'll see. The goal is to possibly reach 50. I'll be 29, so I don't know. I think that I want to have my first book published. So by this time next
Future
year.
Jen, first book.
Remember that.
You heard it here
You
first.
remember that. You have to send me this clip. So I remember that. Yeah, I think that's what I want to do. I think that I really, really want to do that. And I started it and I've stopped it and I've started it and stopped it again. And I just think I have to commit to it 100%. But I want to get my first book published.
So what a story. This is the part of the show where if there's some guiding principles or some nuggets that you can give to the audience, anything that they can take into their day and make not only positivity actionable, but make anything that they're trying to do in their life actionable from the experience that you've been able to have.
I like that, nuggets. I'm going to use that. So I think that if there's 3 things I can tell anybody at any stage in their life right now, is to listen to yourself intuitively. You know what you love, you know your passion, really hone in on it, listen to yourself and do it. Don't be afraid of taking no. Don't be afraid of failing, because who cares? I think you learn a lot from failure. Failure is good. I think it is a attribute that people undervalue. It makes you who you are, and it will continue to help you grow. So don't be afraid of failure. And thirdly, just go out and do it. Stop the excuses, just do it. Nobody else is going to do it except you. And I think that that is one of the biggest factors that stops anybody, that stops me from doing a lot of things, is that, oh, I have to do this. No, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it done and do it. Get it out there and just do it. Easy as that. So yeah, I think that's it.
Perfection is a myth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm such a perfectionist. It's bad.
Just get it done.
Just get it done. Just
get better each time, right?
Yep.
Don't get bogged down in the what ifs. What are people gonna feel?
Yep.
Right? How are they gonna feel about this? If
Don't
it's
worry about
something that
those
you
things.
believe in, just keep doing it, and eventually people will come around.
And listen, if you do it from your heart, it will follow.
People really appreciate that.
Yeah.
When you do that.
Yep, it really is.
So how do people get in contact with you?
They can find me, my website, thesocialgirltraveler.com. They can find me on Instagram. I respond to everything personally. They can find me on Facebook at The Social Girl Traveler. They can find me on Twitter at Social Traveler. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Social media, guys, you can find me anywhere.
two things left.
Yeah.
Number one, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for inviting me.
It is cold.
Well,
right?
this is fun.
Well, it's actually all right now. It's not so bad right now.
The sun is shining and the wind stopped.
I don't know if we settled in or maybe I have hypothermia. I'm not sure. But thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to be here. An amazing person, an amazing story. And then finally, this is of the utmost importance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we end our show every week.
High five.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Oh, did we miss that? I typically miss high fives.
Hasn't happened yet.